We have time for some few questions. And thank you very much for very interesting lectures. And Richard, do you think that we are wasting money when we use these monitoring agencies?
Well, so I've worked for 20 years for monitoring and measurement agencies. And so I think I have to say, no, we're not wasting money. But I think we need to think about how our budgets are spent. First of all of you should always be renegotiating with your monitoring and measurement agency, because I'm sure there's always better value to get out of them, especially if you've been with the same company for a number of years. I'd certainly be thinking about having a conversation and talking to competitors and seeing what other services are available. But I think Stephen mentioned it in his talk. You can't get to outtakes and outcomes without doing something, and you need to measure the thing that you're doing, which is the outputs, before you can get to those outtakes and outcomes. So the monitoring and measurement companies are very much focused on content analysis, so you need to carry on doing that, because you can only have an effect if you've had a cause. And that's what you're measuring at that point. But you must be thinking about those other measurement areas as well. So perhaps assigning, stop trying to boil the ocean. If you're at a company that's trying to monitor everything, maybe zoom in a bit onto just the content that matters, that's delivering your key target audiences, and use some of that budget instead to pull together some of the other data.
But I'm sort of struggling how to understand, when do we know what matters? How do we know what matters?
Okay, so in terms of content, we need to think about our audience. We don't want these videos for half an hour with men on auto cues on YouTube where our audience might not be. So we have to really understand where our audience is. We have to understand what type of content resonates with them. And in terms of measuring success, we must have a conversation with our bosses. And we must make sure that the boss and us are aligned on what it is that the boss wants us to do and what we're doing and what success looks like. And that comes about from having tough, frequent conversations to make sure that you're aligned. A really big flaw is that as PR professionals, and I was guilty of it when I was a PR myself, is we just do stuff. And our default, we turn up in an office, it's busy, we start doing stuff, the press are calling. We're not focusing on doing the stuff that necessarily matters. And to do that, you have to talk to the boss, understand what it is, and then strategically support that.
And Stephen, what difference is planning and evaluation making to the effectiveness of our communications campaigns?
Well, in my own department, it's saving us money, and it's allowed me to reduce the size of my workforce, because we're doing stuff that needs to be done rather than just stuff, as Richard mentioned. I'll give you a couple of examples of the value. We do two campaigns every year that we have to do. One is this tax returns campaign, and another one is for a tax, it's called tax credits. It's for people on low incomes, and every year they have to reapply to get their money. If they don't, it costs us about £90 to put them back in if they've missed the deadline, because we have to do it manually. Now, we measure our advertising, and we're supposed to evaluate it, but it was traditionally measured in terms of audience reach and recall. And so targets were set to 79% of the audience, 6 times opportunity to see, and all of these sorts of things. We weren't measuring what happened afterwards. So we took out the TV advertising for this campaign in Northern Ireland. It's small, and so it's manageable, and if the effect were to be catastrophic, it would only be catastrophic in a small place. And we saw, as a result of it, that there was a reduction in awareness, and there was a reduction in reach and such like, which traditionally is where we'd stop. But then we looked at what happened to the number of people who filed, and did they file on time. And there was a 10% reduction in filing on time. And so extrapolating that nationally, if that were to happen nationally, if we stopped that TV advertising, then it would cost us nearly £15 million in fees to go back and put these people back in. So we know the value to the business of that TV advertising, and we know the cost to the business of not doing it for that one reduction. And in the self-assessment, the tax campaign that we ran in January, similarly, we down-weighted in one region, and we up-weighted in another last year. and there was no statistical difference between them. So because there was so much recall already, we knew that it didn't make much difference how much we advertised, provided there were enough opportunities to see. And so I cut the budget by a third this year, crossed my fingers, and we had because we changed the balance as well and we put more into digital, we had a 5 percentage point increase in online filing, which is the biggest single increase we've had for many, many years. So I cut 500,000 out of the budget, saving the department money, and we still had a better outcome for the business from the communications we did.
Okay. Thank you very much, both of you. Thank you for coming to snowy Oslo. And yeah, thanks for taking the time here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.